franchisor?
Best marketing techniques. I'll tell you the best marketing techniques, maybe for all of them today, because I've been in the startups, the mid-sizes, the boutiques, and the MBE. We had $1.6 billion in sales there. But I believe then and believe now that the best marketing techniques are LSM, local store marketing, local area marketing, within 3 to 5 minutes at the front door. And it means you have to teach a franchisee how to get out and form their business. And you know what that's about? It's about relationships. Go talk to people in the community and let them know you're there and you're a real human being. It's what the power behind McDonald's and my friend Fred DeLuca with 25,000, 30,000 stores at Subway. They may be giant businesses, but they all are built on a single unit franchisee who has relationships in their local community. That's the best you can have.
Very, very good answer, Chris.
I run an entrepreneur club in Huntsville, Alabama, and one of our purposes is to help military vets transition back into the real world. One question they're always asking is, how did other military vets make that transition?
You just hit on a topic that is about as close to my heart as you can get. And so for the last, as you saw with Russ Pearl and I doing the Operation Homecoming in Branson, Missouri in 2005, was one effort where, because as Vietnam veterans, we never got a welcome home. In fact, we came home to a country who was so anxious to put the war behind it that by proxy we put the veterans behind them as well. And so we never got a thank you. And so all of these years, it's been my desire to try to see that maybe that scenario, or be part of seeing that scenario never happens again. And unfortunately, we're seeing it happen again today. So that transition is extraordinarily difficult, requires a lot of time that we probably shouldn't take here, but I'll tell you this, we have at the International Franchise Association created an organization called Operation Enduring Freedom. I flew to Washington a few months ago with Michelle Obama and Joe Biden, and we committed to hire 80,000 returning veterans, 5,000 wounded warriors, and since that time we've already hired 64,000. So there's a lot of programs to plug into. If you'll see me, I can put you in touch with those.
Hi, my name is Hitch McDermott, and I study fear through a program called Fear Walk. And I'm curious, for entrepreneurs, we're always facing risk. We're always looking fear in the face. How do you work with both yourself and your franchisees to overcome fear when it presents itself? So many of us fail in the face of fear. How do you motivate people to push through that?
Well, that's a great question. Look, a couple of things, because there's so many. The question's complex. For me, you know, after a couple of tours in Vietnam, that was one kind of fear, and I thought, well, you're in a business world, we can't ever do anything quite like that. You know, if I face that, what the crap, I would be able to deal with this. But I will tell you, there have been times in my career, I can remember one time sitting at my desk and the pressures were so high that if you have any kind of soul as a leader, you have responsibility for everyone that's out there. You care, you want to do the right thing. And I can remember in some decision-making roles where I just bowed my head and I could literally physically feel the heat on the back of my, I could feel it. It was just, it was a different kind of fear, yet the same kind of fear. So here's what I would say. It's why I'm saying you can't, how the heck does anybody go through life without faith? You have to have faith. You have to believe, and part of creating a culture where you help other people to have risk is to make failure okay. You know, I tell my leadership councils that we meet every couple of weeks, and I tell them, when you make any decision you want to make, by yourself, except the one that drills a hole below the water line of the company. That one we ought to make collectively. We ought to talk about that, but don't fear the failure. I mean, it's just words. The only thing I can tell you is this. The journey, again, is a life's journey. And there's a faith requirement in it. My belief is there are two destinations to that journey, and we get to make the choice every day which one we're heading towards. And the development of faith, here's an interesting piece. God, we are objective focused, we're dream focused, we're goal focused. God is not. God's process oriented. And when we're on this journey, He's more interested in what we're becoming in the process than what we're achieving along the way. And what we're achieving as our faith grows is character. And character develops. You can't have a vision any better than your character. You can't. So that the faith and remember the mountainside and the valleys?
Yeah.
You got to experience some of that.
That's right.
In order to understand that your faith is real, that the object of your faith is real, and that there's a destination that's positive on the other end. So I think that's what mentoring does. I think that's why in the Marine Corps basic tenets of leadership, they would take us out and we would assault Viet Cong villages, and we'd be assaulted. I mean, here in stateside, and we'd be assaulted. We knew what was going to happen before we ever went over there. We have to grow as leaders to a point where we can look people in the eyes. That's why I have trouble following someone that has never suffered. And know when I look in their eyes, they say, you've been there, haven't you? You've been there. You know what's going on. I want to follow you. I want to be with you. I want to follow you. And so there's no easy answer. There's a tremendous devotional out by a little-known guy by the name of Walter Heinrichs. And the name of the devotional is The Diary of a Desperate Man. And you ought to read it.
Diary of a Desperate Man.
Powerful, powerful. Here's what he says. He says, we fear in the direction of our hope. And we fear in the direction of our faith. Because it's true.
Yeah.
If you stop and think about it, that's where the fear comes in, because we're afraid our faith isn't real, or it's not going to work, or our hope isn't real and it's not going to work. But that's the way God set it up. And that's what we need to teach other people. This is many years ago, 40 years ago. He's talking about a mentor.
By the way, Dexter Yater is the guy who really took Amway and took it to what it is today, by the way.
One of his things. But I mean, you get a mentor like that. Dexter never liked to fly. So he had this big coach, one of these big Prevost buses, and he'd go over. And when I want to meet with him, I'd call the secretary and find out where he was, and then I'd fly into the city. He'd pick me up in his coach, and I'd ride with him to the next city, just to sit and talk to him. And usually it was probably midnight to 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning. I'll tell you a quick story. We were driving back into Charlotte on one of those trips, and he was a car collector at the time. He had like 30, 40 cars. We were passing an old junk lot. And he happened to see something in the junk lot, and he had his driver pull over. And here, I mean, I'm in a 3-piece suit. And we're climbing over these fences, over the barbed wire, into this and so he had like an old 54 Chevy. It was just so beat up. It was awful. And he was on one side of his car, and I was on the other, and he was looking at it. And he's a little short guy. Giant, but a short guy. And he looked up over the top, and he looked at me, and he said, Jim, what do you think this car's worth? And I mean, I couldn't buy a bicycle at the time. I had no idea. I'd like to have bought a car, like a real one. So I said, oh, Dex, I don't have a clue. And he said, well, what do you think it would be worth after you fix it up? And I said, again, I don't know what it's worth now. He said, well, look, here's the thing to remember. That's just like people. It's not their value today. Just think about their value after they're fixed up. And you know what that really means? I've come to think through the years. It means when they have gotten rid of the amnesia and remember where they came from and how they were originally made, and the hope and dream that they were born with, return home once again, kind of an echo of Eden. Very powerful thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, do me a favor. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Can I do one thing?
Please.
I was listening to the exchange, I guess it was today, between you and Mom and Good Doctor. And I just had to tell you a quick story that I thought of, and no offense to anybody in the story. Take away from it what you want, but it's girl goes to school, and the teacher gives them an assignment and says, come in tomorrow and you're going to give your report. And she comes in the next day and she starts giving a report on Jonah and the whale. And it was a science class. And the teacher stopped her and he said, look, you know, I appreciate that, but don't you know that science has proven that a whale's throat's too small to swallow a human being? That can't happen. Class got real quiet. She looks around. She begins to continue to tell the story. And the teacher stopped her again. He said, look, I don't want to be rude to you. At 7 years old. But you're telling something that's not scientifically or factually accurate here. Academia's proven, blah, blah, blah. And she continues to tell the story. So he breaks on her again, and she looks at him and she says, but you know, I believe in this, and so when I get to heaven, I'm just going to ask Jonah. And the teacher said, well, what, Jonah's in hell? And she said, well, then you ask. See,